Michael Jordan was under a microscope. And you got to remember, even though LeBron is clearly the biggest star,
Right.
there are a plethora of stars in the NBA because the NBA has globalized its brand.
Does LeBron face tougher scrutiny than Michael Jordan did?
Yes, because, and look, we're not having to get into the who's the better.
And so many guys are their own individual entities and corporations.
Right.
LeBron is one of many.
This episode of NBA Showdown will break down 7 key insights from Stephen A. Smith and reveal why LeBron James has endured a level of public scrutiny Michael Jordan never experienced. We will go through each statement in order, dissecting what it means, and then putting it into the broader context of the modern NBA. By the end, you will see the game and this debate in a whole new light. Before we start, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next NBA Showdown breakdown. And let us know in the comments whether you think LeBron's era of social media makes his career even more impressive. Stephen A. Smith draws a sharp contrast between Jordan's greatness and LeBron's standing among his peers. His point is that Michael Jordan's dominance created a separation so wide that it placed him in a different category from his contemporaries. In Jordan's era, this separation elevated him into a rarefied space where his greatness was unquestionable and almost universally respected by his fellow players. That kind of gap meant Jordan was rarely subject to the same peer-to-peer debates that LeBron finds himself in today. Jordan's aura became bulletproof within the league itself, which insulated him from certain forms of criticism. LeBron, however, is in a different position. The league today is overflowing with elite talent, international stars, and dynamic personalities. Even though LeBron is the most recognizable face of the NBA, the competitive field is far more crowded and the narrative environment is far more fragmented. Modern players are constantly compared not only to legends of the past, but also to each other in real time. Social media accelerates those comparisons to the speed of light. This means that LeBron cannot exist in that same untouchable space Jordan occupied. Every game is another chance for the public and even other players to question his status. What Stephen A. is pointing out here is that the foundation of scrutiny is different. Jordan's separation from his peers shielded him from some of the constant noise. LeBron is stuck in a world where separation is harder to achieve, and even when he does create it, it gets picked apart immediately. In this way, LeBron's greatness exists under an entirely different microscope, one that is always on, always zoomed in, and always ready to magnify the smallest imperfection.
Greatness that was far and apart, separate from any level of separation that LeBron James has been able to create with his brethren. That put Jordan in the eye of the storm.
Shannon Sharpe leaves no ambiguity. In his view, LeBron faces tougher scrutiny than Michael Jordan ever did. The key here is that Sharpe is not even getting into the who's the better player debate. He's isolating one factor: the environment of public and media pressure. This focus makes the statement more powerful because it removes the emotional bias of fan loyalty and looks purely at the conditions each man played under. Jordan had critics, no doubt, but those critics were limited to traditional media outlets, post-game interviews, and whatever narratives the TV networks chose to push. LeBron is dealing with something else entirely. His every move is tracked, documented, and discussed across millions of platforms. The intensity is relentless. Social media algorithms thrive on polarizing discussions, so debates about LeBron's greatness, his failures, and even his personal life get amplified at a scale Jordan never faced. Sharpe's observation forces us to confront the fact that the mental and emotional endurance required to maintain peak performance in LeBron's era might actually be greater than in Jordan's era. This is not about comparing skill levels, but about acknowledging that playing under constant global observation is a unique challenge. In a way, Sharpe is suggesting that LeBron's ability to excel for 2 decades under such scrutiny is itself a monumental achievement.
Does LeBron face tougher scrutiny than Michael Jordan did?
Yes, because, and look, we're not having to get into the who's the better.
Stephen A. shifts the lens slightly here. While acknowledging the age of social media and the increased scrutiny players face, he points out that today's athletes also have access to resources that previous generations did not. modern players are compensated at unprecedented levels, giving them the means to manage their image, hire personal PR teams, and invest in mental health resources. In theory, these advantages should help them withstand the storms of criticism. However, the reality is more complicated. The same wealth and visibility that provide those resources also amplify the expectations. The more a player earns, the more fans and media feel entitled to dissect their every move. The pressure grows with the paycheck. Jordan had endorsements and fame, but his financial world and media exposure were still limited compared to the modern athlete. LeBron operates in a high-stakes global business environment where a single misstep can create a media firestorm within minutes. Stephen A's point here is nuanced. Yes, today's players have tools to counter the cynicism, but having tools does not erase the fact that they are under constant fire. If anything, the abundance of resources makes the criticism sharper because the public assumes that with all those advantages, failure is inexcusable. For LeBron, the balancing act between leveraging these resources and surviving the unending scrutiny is part of the unique burden of being a superstar in 2025.
You talk about the age of social media.
Yes.
And the scrutiny.
Yes.
You don't talk enough about the resources today's generation of players because of the money that they're getting paid.
Shannon Sharpe reinforces a crucial distinction between Jordan's and LeBron's careers: the absence of social media in Jordan's time. His argument is built around the idea that Jordan was never subjected to a non-stop, around-the-clock news cycle. Without Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, or even 24/7 sports networks in full swing, Jordan's highs and lows existed in a slower-moving narrative. If he had a bad game, fans might read about it the next morning in a newspaper or hear a brief mention on SportsCenter, but the conversation didn't spiral endlessly across the globe in real time. LeBron, by contrast, plays in an ecosystem where every moment is captured, clipped, posted, and analyzed instantly. It is not just the big games or high-pressure moments. It's practice footage, sideline interactions, even facial expressions during timeouts. The fact that Sharpe references Rich Paul's agreement here is telling. Those inside LeBron's inner circle acknowledge that the media climate today is unprecedented. Sharpe's comment also underscores the mental fatigue that can come from this reality. In Jordan's era, the noise could be avoided. You could turn off the TV, skip the sports section, and live without constant reminders of public opinion. In LeBron's world, the scrutiny follows you everywhere: your phone, your mentions, your family's accounts. There is no true off switch. Sharpe is effectively highlighting that it is not just the existence of criticism, but its persistence and ubiquity that makes LeBron's era more challenging.
Scrutiny that LeBron has to go through because there was no social media. There was no 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 in which we had an idea.
Here, Stephen A. Smith zeroes in on a layer of modern athlete life that many overlook: the tools available to fight back against scrutiny. He suggests that today's stars have options to counter negativity: social media to control their narrative, direct-to-fan communication, mental health professionals, and brand managers. These resources are a direct result of the massive financial boom in professional sports. But Stephen A's insight is more than a casual observation. It raises a question: do these resources truly neutralize scrutiny, or do they simply make the battleground more complex? Having the ability to respond instantly to criticism is powerful, but it also creates the temptation to engage in public battles. For some athletes, this engagement only prolongs controversy. For others, it becomes a double-edged sword. They can correct misinformation, but in doing so, they may unintentionally amplify it. In Jordan's time, most criticism was filtered through established media channels. By controlling access to himself, Jordan could limit the reach of detractors. Today, LeBron has no such luxury. He can post directly to his audience, but so can every critic with a smartphone. The very tools that give him a voice also give the world a louder voice against him. Stephen A's remark here underlines that while resources exist, they do not replace the mental resilience needed to withstand constant public judgment.
What they have available to them to ward off the cynicism and the scrutiny.
Shannon Sharpe's observation here is both sharp and revealing. the internet has turned ordinary people into self-appointed experts. In the modern sports conversation, every fan believes they can play the role of coach, general manager, scout, or analyst. This democratization of opinion has dramatically increased the volume and variety of criticism athletes face. It is no longer just trained journalists or rival coaches dissecting your performance. It is millions of fans worldwide, many of whom speak with the certainty of seasoned professionals. Sharpe's example is telling. In Jordan's day, a 50-point game would be celebrated. Today, a 50-point performance by LeBron might still be followed by fans claiming someone else could have scored more. This perpetual comparison culture diminishes even the most extraordinary achievements. It turns milestones into starting points for debate, rather than moments of pure admiration. What Sharpe is highlighting is that modern athletes are rarely allowed to bask in their accomplishments. The internet's instant analysis strips away the grace period between achievement and critique. For LeBron, this means that his greatest games are often immediately placed under a microscope for flaws, context, or alternative narratives. In Jordan's era, dominant performances could stand on their own without being instantly contrasted with hypothetical outcomes. Sharpe's point amplifies the argument that LeBron's journey is uniquely exhausting because of how quickly praise can turn into criticism in the modern digital landscape.
The internet is done. It's turned the common person into a head coach, into a general manager, into a scout, into a professional athlete, all these things, so now they get to have an opinion. See, Michael would score 50 points, and they never said, well, Larry would have scored 65.
Stephen A. Smith closes this series of observations by acknowledging that Michael Jordan was indeed under a microscope. But that microscope was fundamentally different. In Jordan's day, the NBA's brand was still growing internationally. While he was the undisputed face of the league, the number of global stars was limited. Today's NBA is overflowing with elite players who are brands in their own right, and the league itself has fully globalized. LeBron is not just competing for attention with his American peers, he shares the stage with international stars who have massive followings in their home countries. This means that while LeBron is the biggest name in the sport, he is one of many in a way Jordan never was. That shared spotlight can dilute the level of reverence he receives while still keeping him in the crosshairs of criticism. In other words, LeBron bears the burden of being a primary target for scrutiny without the universal pedestal that Jordan stood on. Stephen A.'s framing here is essential to understanding modern pressure. LeBron's scrutiny is not only about what he does, it's about how he exists within a crowded field of superstars, and in an era where the league's global nature multiplies both adoration and criticism. The microscope is bigger, the light is brighter, and the number of people looking through it has never been higher.
Michael Jordan was under a microscope. And you got to remember, even though LeBron is clearly the biggest star,
right,
there are a plethora of stars in the NBA because the NBA has globalized its brand,
right,
and so many guys are their own individual entities and corporations.
Right.
LeBron is one of many.
When you connect all 7 insights from Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe, a clear picture emerges. LeBron James has navigated a professional environment fundamentally more scrutinized than Michael Jordan's. The shift from traditional media to an all-consuming digital ecosystem has transformed every game, every press conference, and every public appearance into a potential global talking point. Jordan was great in an era where greatness could stand unchallenged for at least a day before debate began. LeBron is great in an era where greatness is instantly questioned, dissected, and compared. Yes, modern athletes like LeBron have unprecedented resources to manage their image, but those tools exist alongside unprecedented challenges. The rise of the internet has not only multiplied the voices of critics, but also given them platforms with massive reach. Every fan now feels like a decision maker, every rival has a platform, and every performance exists in direct comparison to legends past and present. Ultimately, the LeBron versus Jordan debate will never have a single, undisputed answer. But one truth is undeniable. LeBron James has lived and thrived under a microscope far larger, sharper, and more relentless than anything Michael Jordan ever faced. That reality deserves recognition in any conversation about their respective legacies.